So what I'd like to do now is have a word of prayer, and then we're going to jump in this river together. My wife and I, we're going to entertain questions today. So you get a chance to break. If you do not with me go too long, just so you can stay focused with me. And so let's lift our hands together and pray. Father, we lift our hands today, believing that what we talk about today we believe that the words we share will be life-giving and will change marriages and live lives. We believe they will find healing, blessing, and strength. We give you the praise for the single people who are here, those who are contemplating marriage. May what we say help them as well to find peace and direction in their life. In Jesus' name. Everybody say? Amen. It's good. Now, I want you to think of a couple of things that I want you to ask us about. Women, I'm going to let you go first today. Things you'd like to ask Diane. So the first section will be called Ask Diane. Everybody say Ask Diane. Ask Diane. Come on, Diane, would you please join me? Give her a big hand. You don't need anything to look. You just hold that mic in your hand. Oh, good. Okay, ladies, we will have what we call Ask Diane. So you get to ask any nosy question you want. It can be about me, it can be about anything. The reason for this is marriage. One of the things about marriage that's really difficult, people, is it exposes you. Warren Buffett made a statement that was really powerful. He said, you don't know who's naked until the tie goes out. When the tie goes out, then you learn things. And I really believe that transparency is a great tool. So what we're going to do is we're going to play a little game. Diane, it's called Ask Diane. And so I want you to, if you would please, ladies, ask Diane a question. Raise your hand. Would you like to ask her? In the back, please. Say it out loud, and then we'll repeat the question.
Okay. Menopause in marriage. Is that effective?
Menopause in marriage. Get right to it, girl. Don't do this.
Yes, menopause in marriage is extremely important. I am a wonderful 62 years old. Like, I know what age I'm so grateful for every single day. My family passed young, so my sister and I are breaking records, so I'm excited. So there are, just like there are some biological things that goes on with women and those brothers, sometimes they don't understand all of that process, and they need to try to help them along because they're going to have it with their daughters, their wives. It's not just their wife being special. You know, it is some biological changes that happen in us. So we need to first of all have clarity about our own bodies. And then after we have clarity about our own bodies, then we try to share it also with our spouse. So that our spouse just don't know we're just being mean for no reason. We're having hot flashes. We're going through all these changes. You know, this hurt, that hurt. You know, and that's just a part of the wonderful, glorious part of being female. And it's something my daughter said. Well, can we just ignore all of that and just take everything out so we don't have to worry about it? And it's like, no, God has given us this gift, this ability to bring forth life. And because we have this gift and this ability to bring forth life, there's a periodic price to it. You know, so when it comes to menopause, there's a lot of changes that happen in us. And for some of us, we can go to the doctor and have some adjustments made and all of that. But, you know, I would say in order to make sure you still maintain a happy marriage, you have to make sure you keep trying to update your husband. But something that I want to warn to the wives, don't use your medical stages of being a glorious female as an excuse to be carnal. Okay, I wish the brothers weren't in the room, so just close your ears. But ladies, do not use all of the various blessings that we have that come with being a female as an excuse to be carnal. I'm not talking to you right now because you know it's just that time of month now. Don't fool me, I'm hot flashing. Get away. Don't use your biological stages as an excuse to be carnal. Okay?
Let me jump in and say this. Men go through change as well. Testosterone levels lower. Men face great challenges physically. You know what I think is important? Most of us don't know our numbers. We don't know where we are. Some people just aren't aware. If I'm in menopause, what does that mean? You know, am I having estrogen issues, testosterone issues, what's happening in my body. I'm really aware of my numbers. I'm a big numbers guy. I know all my numbers, and I'm in this special medical program and this whole thing because I really want to make sure that I know I'm too busy to be sick. I have a lot going on, and I just need to be able, you might need to close that door. I need to be able to manage what's happening. And a lot of times, for example, on the guy side of the issue, if you just look up the dangers of low testosterone, mood swings, physical challenges, performance issues, and sexual issues, but it also can lead to really bad long-term problems for you. And I just think that when you know where your body is, you don't blame each other for it.
Amen.
Yes,
Amen.
So for example, when it comes to sex, sometimes the person really is having a physical challenge. And if you can be candid about that, if you can say, this is hard for me, and don't take it personally. You know, if I break my leg, you don't take that personally, right? You know, you just talk about, I hurt myself. You get that, oh, I'm sorry, baby, you get that. Well, if a person's going through certain stages of menopause, you need to first read about it. What I used to do is to get that angry. I would read about women. The challenges of dealing with a difficult pastor's wife. I used to read books like that. She would get
Instead of being a difficult pastor, about being a difficult pastor's wife.
because I don't have a problem with pastors. That's all right. I have a problem with getting along and understanding women. There's a book called The Female Brain, which is really good too. It talks about how we women think. And men don't understand that. And so they think sometimes when she's switching, that's because she wants to be sexy. No, that's where the hips work. Where the hips sit in the joint. I mean, they ain't got nothing to do with trying to be sexy. Why are you looking at me like that? You know, you get confused making assumptions, but you don't realize they don't see their breasts the way you do. They don't see things the way you see it. And during certain seasons, their bodies are far more complex. Men is pretty A, B, C. Women got all alphabet. And when you hear them talk, men don't even talk about their bodies. Have you noticed this? If we talk to a brother, brothers don't say, hey man, how your toe doing? Oh man, my toe's good. Right here, this right here. Women talk about that. Child, my hip is hurt. Then you can't take it. I can't, hey, stop. Just the fact that you go to a gynecologist, that's a whole nother world. If men had to do that, that would change their life. What do you want me to do? Get up on the table. You want me to put your leg in wet? What? No, it's got to be about it. Oh, let's go down there. Checking that out. I checked that out by myself. Playboy. See, Playboy don't tell you the truth. What you doing? You don't know what you're doing. You don't even understand how it works. You're nothing. I mean, when I had a little girl and I changed her diaper, I was very uncomfortable. I said, oh boy, okay. All right, she's wet. She's wet now, and you're changing. So this your daughter. I said, know that. But she wet. That's my turn, baby. I felt like I was sinning. Or something. I felt like I can't do that. It took me a minute. You know what I mean? Then if they leave you with it, baby, then you gotta do it. And what you gonna do? Rise to the occasion. And then, you know, I just had to learn how to be a daddy. Now I got a granddaughter. It's like, all right, Melania, don't try to wait. She's funny. I take her back another day. Little girl, hilarious. But anyway, the whole thing is. Everybody goes through a season, and I think it's important. So thank you for your question. Somebody else? Questions for Diane? That was a good one, yes.
During your 38 years of
Hand me the
marriage,
microphone.
I have it.
No, we need to hear the tape.
During your 38 years of marriage, how did you endure the seasons of, I just don't like you this season, or I love you this season? I mean, how do you deal with the ups and downs of it's just different. Yeah.
She can answer that.
Perfect in every way, every single stage of your life. Yeah. There are seasons where you love people, but you don't like them that much. Yes, and we can relate to that, guys. Don't take it personally. Just think of your kids when they're teenagers, and they're like, you don't really understand, and you don't know, just talk about it. My friends saying about you. Said you love your child, but you don't like them very much while they're going through that particular season. Okay, there are times when your husband, though you may love and adore him and they're magnificent, even my wonderful, your wonderful Uncle Ricky, sometimes he get on my nerves and I don't particularly care for his presence. The stages of your kids, it still did not change your love for them while they're going through that season. It still does not change my love for him. And I think that's what a lot of couples go through. They think, okay, just because we're in this season where, oh gosh, he's irritating on Tuesday, he'll be better on Wednesday. He's irritating on Wednesday, so I must not love him anymore. It's like, no, love is unconditional. It's not, I love because you were wonderful, that's why I love you. No, I love you, period. So what you do is you just love that spouse all the way through all those stages. And then sometimes I've learned that some of the stages that I thought was him was actually me. But I wouldn't confess that, of course.
Stay on the road for a minute.
So, you just give yourself a moment, but make sure that they still feel loved. The love does not change you. Sometimes we'll have, an intense fellowship moment, and he'll say, but babe, I still love you. And I'm thinking, well, I hope so. I hope that moment did not break off our love. So that's how we work.
And understand, part of the good thing about disagreements and those seasons, there's a good thing about that. At least you know. I tell people about the political environment today. I said, no, at least you know.
Yeah.
You don't want to be the dumbest one in the room. That's what I often say. You want to know. At least I understand how they think and what they'll do. So now I can vote accordingly. You understand? In marriage, I at least know how she feels about this or that. I think I'm doing fine, and then she doesn't think so, or vice versa. They're in our situation. It's really we work together. She's my executive director of administration, so she oversees that, and that can be a challenge because working together is a special anointing. I don't think it's safe for every couple to do it. You just don't need to work together. Go your old job, I go to my job. Don't meet this evening, But the way she's wired has worked out well for us. It's been moments of challenge for sure, but I think it is important to come to moments of disagreement and drought, so that when the rain comes,
Amen.
so I embrace those moments. And every time she gets on my nerves, I get on her nerves. We get on each other's nerves. The kids get on all our nerves. Everybody gets on everybody's nerves. But what great thing can you ever do without challenge?
Well,
So we embrace that, and I think you become stronger through it, and it makes you grow up. You can't be a child. This is not for children.
that's right.
You're grown. And sometimes when you look at your life, you still act like you're in high school, middle school, storming out the doors, and hand on the hip, cussing, and you say sanctified and cussing each other out. It's hilarious. You're in the comedy show and heaven. Look at these Christians, bam. It shouldn't be this way. We should be able to engage, disagree, and grow strong.
Amen.
And it really just shows a lot about it. So somebody else, I'll take two more Diane questions and then I'm going on. Is there no more for right now? One? What? No, I'm sorry. Let me get somebody else that hadn't asked. One? Anybody else that has not asked? Because I got to go. Okay, you get the last one. Yes.
Okay, so,
Pass her the mic, please. Just pass it down to they'll pass it to her. 1, 2, 3, 4. There you go.
so when there's a conversation that you had about they understand what they're saying, you understand their point of view on it, maybe
sorry.
Come close.
It's just hold it close.
Okay.
There you go.
So when you've had a conversation 1,000 times, you understand where they're coming from. They understand where you're coming from. You just don't agree. And maybe it's something healthcare related, you know. And you just not getting anywhere with it. You just talk into it and just let it go.
Okay, thank you. You can pass that back to her. While she's getting the mic, I think that's, learning how to live with differences is really important. I'll let you start.
Yeah, I think my initial answer was after you have your his A opinion, my B opinion, and we've both been heard, but a decision has to be made. Biblical principle says head of household makes final call. Just like when your boss, your supervisor makes final call, you can have all the opinions in the world, but someone in that office has to make that final decision. So biblically, head of household makes that final decision. Now, when you say it's health related, that puts another little warning area of concern, because sometimes our loved ones will make these decisions that's harmful to them, and they don't really understand, especially in the man book. Now, my husband doesn't have that testimony, but in the average man book, they put themselves last when it comes to health issues. You know, because they think I need to make sure I work, I provide, you know, I don't need to go to the doctor, I'm fine, you know, all of that. But they don't, we see all of the women who lost their husbands and how not only devastating it is to have that spouse gone, but then the financial consequences, you have heartbreak and financial consequences with him being lost. So sometimes, I would say, in my opinion, the average brother doesn't understand how valuable he is. He thinks he's just financially valuable, but his presence physically is extremely valuable. So I would suggest that even when they're not saying it, that, you know, you give them a break, because sometimes, you know, information has to marinate, but give them a break, pray for them, but make sure they know it's because I love you and I can't even imagine trying to live life without you. Could you please consider, you know, going to the doctor? Could you please consider taking a test? You know, just and just pray on it. Pray.
Well said. Give a big hand, Diane. Let me just pick up on that last point, because I understand, believe me, this whole issue of how men feel when they're interacting about certain topics. We are very, and let me go back a little further and say this, the average woman has not had training when it comes to dealing with men. The average woman did not grow with a father who was engaged that brought them along. They only dealt with men who were romantically involved with them. But they don't have a real working knowledge. And a lot of times they didn't hang with their brothers either. And then you catch her. There's this separate of the sexes that's dangerous, because then a woman is experimenting with her husband, how she talks to him. Men are, and they think it's strange and almost funny to them. So how was your day? Good. That's all you need to say. There's nothing else, no more information. No, what'd you do today? I went to work. What did you do? I worked. I mean, to him, he thinks he's answering all your questions. He doesn't understand why you keep asking questions. You're in the doctor. I feel fine today. When you were sick and thrown up yesterday, that was yesterday. That's that day. I'm healed. Why do you keep, when you throw up every 3 days? But yeah, but I'm healed every other 3 days. They have to. They don't think the way you think. I believe God put you together to help each other. I think everybody brings something to the table, and it's in those courageous conversational moments, what we talk about today, that you learn things. And I do funerals. I deal with death at least once or twice a week. My church is 3,400 active members, and so I'm dealing with death all the time. And I have a staff that just deals with that. So when they call me, my phone goes down, somebody died. Okay. Hello, Bev. What happened, Bev? Can't you keep everybody alive for me today? Pastor Rick, come on now. He's just what happened. Then I got to call the family and encourage them, and if I can, and I try to, if I can, go by and say hi, if I can. You know, then a lot of times, what's sad is when they die, I have to do the funeral. I have to do it myself. I have a staff person do it, and they love me to do it. Well, it's like, okay, yay, let's do funerals. I mean, I would never go to another one in my life, except my own, if I could. I mean, I've done hundreds of them. Emotionally, it's expensive. Dealing with it every week is a very emotional thing. But here's what that taught me. People die for real. And they die for reasons they don't have to die. And when I see a guy who didn't take his cholesterol pill, or his blood pressure pill. I had a guy who didn't take his cholesterol pill. He played a little game with his wife. I ain't taking those pills. And his the main artery burst right here. And he was an invalid for 5 years. Then he died. So you may not die, you just be sick to death. That's what we call it. You all broke up. When I see people eating stuff they should eat, and I was with one pastor and he just kept eating, he pouring a bunch of salt, a bunch of stuff, and I'm gonna eat what I want to eat, I'm not drinking any water. So I said, that's fine, just go ahead, drink water. It's fine with me. You'll preach the gospel like, everybody knows about it, that's fine. That's what you're gonna be doing. It don't make sense for you to have money and resources and not take advantage of your options.
Amen.
And you're praying for God to deliver you, and it's like, okay, how can I deliver you, and you won't deliver yourself?
Come on,
You won't even walk 20 minutes. You talk on the phone for 5 hours, but you won't walk for 20 minutes. That I think is unfortunate. I said this in church the other day, a lady, I said, you should walk around your table if you can. And she sent an email back, says, all right, Pastor Rick, I pulled my table from the wall and I walked around it 100 times. I feel better. I said, good. It's about trying. So, but we have to understand, a lot of people are afraid of doctors. They're uncomfortable with it. I was talking to a lady the other day, and she was talking about her husband and the doctor and all that stuff. And I said, she's a nurse. I said, well, won't you help him set it up? She says, well, I told him she should do it himself. Some people are uncomfortable with that. Help each other. Can we say that together? Come on, say help each other. And you should let each help each other. My wife helps me. There's something beneficial about that. Now, let's switch gears for a minute. I want to take you to 1 Corinthians chapter 7, if I can. And I want to take you down 2 roads. Okay? One road today is going to talk to you. I want to talk to you about the whole issue of Paul's view about marriage. And there are 2 sides to this conversation. He speaks from the single side, as a single guy, and he speaks from the married side. Now again, these notes are on RickyTemple.com, okay, RickyTemple.com. And the notes are on the middle of the page. You can download them, or after today, we're going to have them under a category called resources. I'm going to have them put Word of Faith notes up on the main page. You'll see, look for Word of Faith notes, or look under resources. Where are you going to look? Word of Faith notes, or under resources. That's what's going to be after today. And so everything I'm sending to you, you can basically get there. 1 Corinthians chapter 7 is a great chapter because Paul who is the greatest advisor, by the way. He's the greatest advisor of marriage in the Bible. That's why I believe he was married. Something happened to his wife, that's my view, I may be wrong. I'll see when I get to heaven, look it up in the library or ask him. But he is very thorough. He talks about sex, he talks about relationships, he talks about getting along, he talks about unsaved husbands marrying Christian women, and just how you date. It's just amazing. And one thing that's impressive to me is 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 7, is Paul loved being single. Paul did not want to be married again, or wherever he was at this stage of life. And I can't prove he was married, but let's just say what he said and stick with the text. He said, I wish that all men were even as I myself. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 7. I wish everybody could be single. That's what he said. To each one has his own gift from God, one of this manner, another after that. But I say to the unmarried and to the widows, it is good for them if they remain even as I am. So Paul is cheerleading for being single. So if you're a single person here and you're thinking about marriage or whatever, I don't think that you should spend your life dreaming about marriage as if it's the answer to all problems. All you gotta do is ask the married people here. I'm not saying I like marriage, but I wanted to mention a guy who talked about marriage, who did the most teaching on marriage, who was a fan of being single. That doesn't mean if you're on the board that you go get a divorce, someone will be like, Paul, I didn't say that. So don't use that as an excuse to go in your marriage. I'm simply saying, if you are in a single state, learn how to be content there. Learn how to be a happy person. I really think if you are content, if you are happy, it's infectious. You're not going to find somebody to make you happy. I didn't make Diane happy. I think some of you, when you came into a relationship, the reason you have trouble right now is because you came in with these high expectations. That somehow if I meet you and we have a relationship and we make love, that somehow that's going to make us like each other. What did I say yesterday? A bird and a fish can fall in love, but where would it live? It's not my responsibility, in my opinion, to make her happy. It's not my job for her to make me happy. It's not her job to make me happy. I believe we contribute to the happiness of each other. We contribute to that. But if I'm a depressed person, she doesn't have the power. One time we were talking, and in pastors, one of the biggest problems with pastors is they face depression. It's a very difficult job emotionally. Because several times a week you're in front of people getting judged. You're always in front of people. Is his clothes right? Am I preaching well? It's just amazing. So sometimes that's why preachers do what they do. You know, they're trying to work through the moment. That's why sometimes well, because you know, especially if you get lives, you do it. I used to preach like that all the time, and I'm not against it. But sometimes when I get lost, I use that. Oh, hallelujah! Come on, say amen. I'm trying to figure out what I was. That was me. You know, you're trying to talk fast, and Jesus said it. Try to rhyme words. It's just hard work. People sleeping on you, you know, and you just throw something out. I'm like, I worked hard on this sermon. You better wake up. It's very emotional up here. Very emotional. And when you do it several times a week, you know, I don't get a break, you know. It's just, you know, let me stop. That's a whole other conversation. But what's interesting is if preachers, you know, I went to Diane early in our marriage, and I was going through a really difficult time. And she said to me, she says, I can't help you. You need to call me your preacher friends. In other words, I'm not a professional on this. You need somebody like really gifted. I'm just your wife. And I thought that was cold. But it was honest. It was the truth. You know, people get to the place they can't help you. And it really helped me because it's like, stop making her feel like your job every day is to make me feel better.
Okay.
I mean, that's, you should change your vows. I promise to make you feel better all your life. I promise to give you joy and make you smile. And when you're sad, it's my responsibility. It's my fault if you're unhappy. Really? I think you put too much on each other. You put too much on your kids. Look. The Bible says this. Love your neighbor the way you love yourself. Say that with me, come on. Love your neighbor the way you love yourself. Now that means, if I want to know how to love you, it starts with me loving me. I'm the standard for love. If I love myself, a man should love his wife the way he loves his own flesh. The Bible says in Ephesians, right? So that's all about me understanding that if I love me good, I can love you better. And it's all about me taking that on myself. Some of you have, and ladies, you do this a lot. You know, you have all these women. Oh, when I meet George, Frank, oh, he's so great. He's so romantic. Do you think he's like that all the time? No. You know, she's so fine. She's not gonna be fine every day. When you see her in the morning, you got, oh, wake up, girl. So that's wow. And that, because nobody's cute all the time. And what's amazing is the prettiest girls, the prettiest ones, don't think they're pretty. The prettiest ones, they don't think they're pretty. Thank you. That's my microphone. My anointing. I preached so hard, I preached my mic off. But anyway, if you're watching this, I am now making adjustments. There we go. It comes off again. That's just more anointing. But understand that there's something wonderful about freeing a person from that responsibility and then being friends. You don't expect anybody else in your life to do that. Well, some people do. Some people put that in the pastor, some people go on all their friends. You didn't call me back. I text you. You didn't text me back. Is that my job? Why are we making it somebody else's job? Repeat with me, please. Say this. This is my life. Want to try that again? Come on, say this. This is my life. It's my life. I was really determined that when Dan, the pastor's wife, wouldn't lose her life, wouldn't lose who she is as a person. Because in this job, you get back an island. You let members put stuff on her. She's supposed to wear this, the pastor's wife. Where do you get your job description? What do you do the pastor's wife police? Putting that pressure on my kids or my wife. You know, I moved my daughter out of a Christian's class, so she was sitting there harassing my daughter. Yo, pastor, yo, daddy on TV. I know your daddy. My daughter said, but then I'm like, she's 8th grade. What you mean? You don't know my daddy. He don't talk like you. I went to a meeting trying to talk to her and try to say, well, let's work this out. And she just gets so spiritual. All the sinners in the room were quiet. Like, all the sinners was nice. They were professionals. She was crazy. I said, move out this class. You're going to save yourself. Get out of here. Get me to a heathen. I just said, my daughter here under this pressure. Here's what she told my daughter one time. My daughter was in the 87th grade or something like that, and her friend was in the bathroom stall. So she pushed her friend trying to come out, they pushed the door, had her foot on the door, they was laughing. She said, now she told my daughter, she said, see, you know why you did that? Because you have repressed anger against your father. She said, my daddy and I have a good time. She was psychoanalyzed. I said, you know what? Out your class. Out of your class. See, sometimes Christians take things places that it don't need to go.
Wow, that's good.
You see, imposing pressure on people.
That's good.
That's not my wife's job. If I'm broke, who's broke? I'm broke. If I don't like my financial situation, I need to do something about that. I just dealt with a wife the other day. I dealt with that once or twice a week. Husband died, you ain't got no money. Guess who broke? You. You don't even know what the bills are. You don't know what the insurance papers are. And guess who's going to be in trouble? You. Say me. One more time, say me. You're going to be the one. See? This is your life. This is submission to, and I'll talk about that in a minute. That doesn't mean that you lose, you stop caring about yourself. No. It's your life. And it's important for you to understand that. I can tell my members that. It's your life. You jacked it up. Don't come to me and get mad with me because you jacked up your life. And now it's my job description to fix it at 11:59. Come in at 11:59. You did all this. You had all day coming to me. You came at 11:59. All I can do is pray for you. You're going to be God. Bow your head. Praise God. 11:59. One more time. Say, this is my life. It doesn't mean I'm selfish. It means I'm clear about what's true.
Yes.
So Paul loved being single. He loved his life. I like that. I think that's impressive. But also Paul, and look at his family. To make Paul what I call his single family. He loved life, but he also understood amazing things about his sexual life. He knew that sexual self-control would be a challenge. Here's what he said in verse 9, 1 Corinthians 7. Verse 9, he said, but if any cannot exercise self-control, they need to get married. It's better to marry than to burn with passion. Somebody said, that's why I'm here, Pastor, because I need to get married because I have no control. That's honest. And so, what should you do? Just marry anybody? If you haven't been married before, you will tell people, do not get married so you can have sex. Because when you get married to have sex, you probably will stop having sex. Sex is not a good reason to get married. And that brings me to another important issue. I think it's important for you to never allow yourself to be controlled by sexual passion. Because if you get married as a single person with that intent, thinking that marriage will bring your sexual life into control, you'll find out that's not true. All the people that I know who are committing adultery, most of them are married, the ones that I counsel. So getting married and having someone to have sex with didn't change their issue. Paul understood that some people needed to be honest and say, okay, I obviously am a single person who needs to be married, so I need to be open to that. That's all Paul was saying. Paul was not saying sex solves, marriage solves your sexual temptation problems. And if you can understand those two things and be clear, if it's possible and there's somebody available and I want to be married and do the relationship, that's okay. I don't need to try to be single. If I have somebody and it's a good potential, marriage might be a good place for me, because if I stay single, I'm going to be sleeping around, and this is a good person, I love them, they love me, let's get married. That's what Paul was saying. Paul was not saying, I have sexual temptation, so to solve these sexual temptations, it's better to marry than to burn. It's better to go ahead and get married to anybody that can have sex, and I'll be fixed, because that's not true. And so if you understand that, and if you can put that in its right box, and the reason that's important is because one of the big issues in marriage is sex. And Paul in 1 Corinthians 7 steps into this conversation, and he talks to single people, and he talks to married people. And he says to married people, he says, listen, I want you to understand that when you get to this issue, there are demands. There are demands that come with marriage. And you have to care about those demands. And one of them, he says, is your sexual life. This is why I think Paul was married at some point. Paul is incredibly insightful. Here's what he said in verse 9, verse 32 of 1 Corinthians chapter 7. And there's a whole teaching I can do because he goes through a whole lot of information. But in verse 32 he says, I want you to be without care. He who is unmarried cares for the things of the Lord, how he may please the Lord. A person who's unmarried can focus completely on their relationship with God. They have no obligations. But he who is married cannot be so committed to God that he forgets his family. You have to care for the things, he said, of the world, how he may please his wife. Paul said, when you get married, you have to make a crossing. The crossing is, I cannot just think about me. Can you say it with me? Please come on.
I cannot just think about me.
I can't just think about me. I have to understand that if I'm unmarried, I can go traveling around the world, I can be busy, I can go here, I can go there, I can do all this stuff, that's fine. But when I get married, I now have to switch. So if you're a single person and you don't want to make the switch, then maybe you shouldn't get married. If you're a married person, you have to understand, I can't just say I'm traveling all over the world, I'm preaching all over the place, and not care about my wife. I have to care about her. She's a priority. And I have to think about this incredible statement, how I may please my wife. A lot of married people, and Paul, I love this chapter because he talks about everything. He says you shouldn't defraud each other. You shouldn't have these sexual punishments. You shouldn't put people, that's why I said this guy to be married someone. I mean, this guy, I didn't know all that, Paul, you single. He says you can't defraud each other. You shouldn't be, well, you were bad today, so you go on the couch, all that kind of stuff. All that is unhealthy. And in chapter 7 of 1 Corinthians, I love the fact that he celebrates his singleness, but he gives great advice to married people. Mm-hmm. He celebrates the state he's in. He's not longing to be married to somebody. But he also looks at married people and says, listen, you need to make sure you're not offending each other. I don't know how you plan to improve your marriage if you don't courageously deal with this area and say, okay, we both put each other in bad places. We both have been guilty of either using money or sex or sometimes manipulation to put the other person at a disadvantage. Why don't you make a vow today? If I'm single, I'm going to celebrate my life and be happy. I'm not going to marry anybody just so that I can have sexual release. That's not God's will. If I'm married, I'm going to love my wife, love my husband like I'm a married person. And we're going to sit down and we're going to start over again, and we're going to allow this new beginning to be something really special, because that's what God had planned for us. That's from a single guy, the champion, saying, in the name of Jesus, I declare that in my life, we can have a new beginning. If I'm single, I can be holy. I can wait on God's time. I will not forget what Paul said. We can't have a new beginning. In Jesus' name. Amen. Stand up on your feet. Walk around. You got 3 minutes, 4 minutes. Tell somebody what you learned in this last hour we talked. It's called a job description. Can you say everything, please? Come on. When you go on a job, you generally know where you sit, what you do. You know what your job is. You know what your salary is. It is my conviction that what's happened in our culture is we've lost sight of our job description. Sometimes I think, for example, the church thinks its job description is to train all the children in the church. I had a conversation with the pastor the other day in a leadership session, and they asked me a question. They said, Pastor Rick, we don't like streaming. We think streaming services is a bad idea because people don't come to church with us. And I said, well, I disagree. I think streaming is a great option for people. And I mean, we touch thousands more people through that medium, and it's just amazing. And on demand, it's thousands more. I said, so. Then they said, well, what about children? The children can't have children's church. And something clicked in my head. I kind of clicked for a minute. I thought, what makes you think that's my job? My job description is, according to the Bible, in Deuteronomy 6 and 7, is to teach my children along the way. That's my job description. So my job is to teach the children. My job is as they walk through the neighborhood. Say, hey son, look at that. That's how it's done. It's not the school system's job. It's your job to give them kids they can work with. But what we've done is we've delegated all that to school, to the government. You know, it's somebody else's job description. And we vote them in because they can make our lives better. And I'm not saying they don't have a responsibility. I'm not saying there's not a role that we play and the government should play. I'm not saying any of that. I'm simply saying when I give it all away, and that's really a change in the way America's thinking has been over the years. We've evolved to a very dependent culture, and our thinking is somebody else's job. So the pastor's job is to make you holy. Really? How is that going to work? I mean, that's not my job. And I think if I understand my job description, it affects what I do. In marriages, the problem is the women don't know what they do and the men don't know what they do. And so you're in this relationship where everybody's kind of trying to fake it, but no one really knows. And then you got these little buzzwords, okay? You submit, ladies, to make Eve, the lie of the man, right? And I know if a man doesn't know any Bible verse, he knows Ephesians 5. Wow, submit yourself to God. As up to the Lord. They got that down, right? You know, and I understand that sometimes the power in that whole verse is lost, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But when I understand my role, it's effective. So what I'm going to just give you a list of things to write down. Okay, and again, these are new notes you can download. But this is what I call from Ephesians chapter 5 verse 20. There's a list of lessons we learn. The first thing we learn is that there are specific responsibilities everybody must follow. Say it with me, please. There are specific responsibilities everybody must follow. Paul, when he talks about family, and he has this courageous conversation about marriage and relationships, he starts off in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 20 to 21, saying, give thanks always for all things to God the Father in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, submitting to one another in the fear of God. As believers, everybody has responsibility at some point to submit. You're not going to be successful in business if you don't let your staff talk to you. There are too many areas in my life. It costs millions of dollars to do what I do. It costs a lot of people, hundreds. I can't see it all. And I have to be smart enough as a boss to realize you can't see it all. Fix it all, know it all. And what has helped me emotionally, and I use that term on purpose because sometimes it's hard for a man to admit that, but emotionally, sometimes if a man is cranky, that means he's being pushed too much emotionally. Something's crowding him. He's, what's a pastor's worst day? What's a pastor's worst day? When nobody comes, that's bad too, quick. Give me what's a pastor's worst day? Worst day? Nah, offering and tithe, but before church. What's his worst day?
Arguing with his wife.
What?
Arguing with his
Arguing with
wife.
his wife? Okay, that's pretty bad too, but I'm looking for something else. What does he have to do every week? Prepare a sermon. Yes, prepare a sermon. It is awful when it's Saturday night and you're not done. It's absolutely awful. My sermons are done, well, I have this whole system, I call it a sermon map, so I lay it out for the year and have this whole really cool way I do it. So that if I'm preaching like this weekend, for example, I'm preaching, last night was 2 hours, today is 2 hours this morning, tonight I'll be preaching in Savannah, and then tomorrow I'll be preaching both, raise your right hand, here, and Savannah. Now, how do I do that? Well, I already pre-taped the sermon for Savannah by video. And so they'll watch the continuation of the series, and I'm preaching here twice. So now here's the deal. How do you prepare? Then I got a whole new series next week I'm doing. I plan ahead. I have a map. I have a whole system that I work on. But if I don't get it done, here's what happens. I'm almost crazy. Yeah. The stress of pressure that men face overwhelms them when they feel like they never get it done. The bills, the house, the this. In my house, for example, my trees were attacking my neighbor's trees. So I had to pay for my trees to be fixed. I had about 30 trees in my yard, and I went to my tree and said, could you just get off my neighbor? I appreciate it. But I had to spend thousands of dollars to get the tree trimmed because it would be a good neighbor. Then my front other trees, that is just a mess. Tree weed. It's always something. Sermons, household life, all of that. All those responsibilities can weigh on you. When you realize what is your job and what's not your job, you're better off emotionally.
Wow.
If your man is grumpy, there's a reason. He may not even know the reason. Could be tied to testosterone. Look it up. Could be tied to chemicals. Could be tied to blood pressure. Could be tied to fatigue. Could be tied to his body is tired, carrying all his weight. It could be. Doesn't sleep enough. Could have sleep apnea. It could be a lot of things. But when you see certain behaviors at the core, let's say he's healthy, everything is fine. If I understand my responsibilities, life goes better. And so sharing that with other people and allowing people to talk to me, it helps me. Submitting one to another. Can you say that with me, please? Come on. Submitting one to another. Letting people help me, letting people help me manage my money, letting people help me, letting people come into my life, and letting people talk to me will make my life easier. That's something we all must do, men and women. So at some points in my life, I need to be submitted. If you are submitting to no one, that's probably why your life is full of pressure. You need an accountant, a lawyer in some cases. Sometimes it's people who work for you, who say, boss, we're going to lose these 3 accounts, we're going to make these changes in the way we do business, the way we bill people, the way we invoice people. You need people that can come to you. We're spending too much money. You need your wife to say you're tired. You need to be able to submit to that and not think you're losing authority. So when you understand that, that's going to help you. That's a responsibility everybody has. Now, but then what he does in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 22, is he narrows it in. home on a vacation. And Diane said, can I take that over? And girlfriend went in there and cut it in half. She said, I'm not giving Delta all that money. I'm not doing it. She started spreading stuff and adjusting stuff and found tremendous deals. I'm impatient sometimes. It costs what it costs. Look, let's pay for the plane ticket. Let's get on with it. Yeah. Diane dance around. You got to steady. And she tried all kinds of deals. And that girl just said me all kinds of money. I didn't give her a raise, praise God. And sometimes, it's awkward because she'll say, honey, and she always does this little thing like, oh, Rick, okay, here we go. Because, you're trying to get confused. I'm not violating the Bible, and I tell him you're about to lose $1,000. Submission means lose the money. Submission means you killing yourself. And, one day I walked by my office, I was in a meeting, and she stopped in the middle. She never does this, but she stopped. She saw me in the meeting. She said, you look tired. I was a wife. I wasn't a staff person at that moment. You look exhausted. I said, really? I thought I looked fine. But I thought about it. Repeat this with me, please. Say, I cannot always be right. Be right. Ladies, don't say anything, just a minute. Say, I am not always right. Right. I'm not always right.
Say that. Wait a minute.
All right, for the ladies only now. Record this now. You got to record But none of us are always right. And I think in this case, when it says to the husbands, this is that you're to submit. Wives will submit to you doesn't mean because we're always right or anything. Really, the word submission is a military word, and it means to be in proper alignment with. It has more to do with the ranking of march, and no more than somehow one being better and stronger than the other one. This is just where you are in the line. And this is all about us being able, like an army, our family, to go to battle. If we're going to go to battle, somebody's in the front, somebody's in the rear, who's more important, the guy in the rear or the person in the front? You know what I'm saying? It depends on where we get attacked. So I don't need to view this as a position of power where you submit to me because I'm better than you, you know what I'm saying? I fight better. That's not true. If you ever fought your wife, no, that ain't true. Sometimes we've taken this verse and butchered it up and made it sound like women are weak. Well, the Bible did say they're the weaker vessel. Okay, I get that, but does that mean you ever seen your wife move front? That doesn't mean that they're not always weaker than you. Technically, women are biologically. There's a whole dynamic to that. I get that. But what I'm saying is, we've taken all of this, and I really misunderstood because one of the greatest shockers to a man when he marries a woman is how strong they can be. Wow. And how intelligent they are. And it is shocking because some of them act so. I almost said did too, but I didn't say that. Before you marry them, because sometimes women are taught to dumb down and play dumb, and so. Where you want to eat? Where everything is? You married, you gonna tell him. I don't want to eat it. I got food poisoning last time I went there. We have an opinion about everything. My wife has an opinion about everything. It's shocking to a guy. I used to say to my wife, "She's so pretty." I used to say, "Wow, you're a real person." What do you think? What do you think? Because men get caught up in your looks. Ladies, if a woman wants a guy, what's one of the first things you tell her? Be intelligent. Use big words when you're talking to him. No, you don't, girl. Get your head done. He gets caught. Men are motivated by sight. The look. Stop it. But it won't keep it. But the sad part is sometimes what happens is a guy doesn't learn you're smart. I tell my daughter, get a man who will smart you up, not dumb you down. Right. And because I understand that he needs to know on the front end. Because once you finish having sex, once he sees you nude, once all that's over with, now he's got to deal with the fact that you do have a political opinion. You do have a viewpoint. if he can't love you as a person, and that's what happens. You sex up your relationship on the front end, okay? Sex it up, all sexy and fine looking. I just dealt with a couple. She sexed it up, dropped everything. She saw, bam, some of this, and then now they all separated, fighting, everything's a mess. Good people who didn't understand. He needs to know that I'm a person. I believe the reason that God told women to submit to men is one reason. He knew that you couldn't make it. He said, if this is going to work, she has to decide to do this. And most women have not. If you know what I know. You talk to them privately, they ain't like that. Because really what they say is he's not smart enough to be submitted to. They think I'll submit to a man who's right all the time, or a man who has all knowledge or all wisdom. And then they have an imaginary man they don't know if he is. That not the one they with sometimes. They think they would Barney Fife or Flair Flintstone. They thought they would get Denzel, but they ain't got him. They found out when they deal with him, I'm not making fun, I'm just being honest, that women, when you listen to them by themselves, talking among themselves, there is not a lot of praise for men's intelligence in this culture.
Wow.
And God foresaw that. And he said, that is poisonous for marriage. You are going to have to choose to submit. You're going to have to choose to lay down your strength the way God did, Jesus did. You have to say, I know I can be more forceful here, but I choose to not do that. God said, wives, submit to your husbands as to the Lord, showing reverence to him. There's something that you can do now. If you choose not to do that, let's be clear. Now you're writing your own marriage script.
Oh, that's good.
You're responsible for the outcome. And if you look at your romantic history, ask yourself, how is this going? You decide. So be clear. It's really important, and this is not, again, not because you're not great, not smart. You're very smart. As a matter of fact, I don't think most people know this. The Bible does not teach submission until Genesis chapter 3. It's after the fall of man that he says that you are to be submitted to your husband. Really, the Lord prophesied, said, what's going to happen is he's going to have rule over you. Because of this decision Eve that you've made, you're going to lose your place. Before the fall, they were even in authority. Right. Genesis 5 says that he called their name Adam.
Yeah.
Adam and Eve. Eve was named by Adam after the fall. That was not God's plan. That's why you feel like you lost something.
Yeah.
That's why you feel like, well, why am I listening to him? Because now we're in war. Somebody's got to lead. And someone has to make a decision. So, if you've heard me publicly have this discussion, if you've been to so many sessions I did about mutual submission, right? I believe that we all are in time submitted, but I believe in certain contexts, in this church, in this congregation, I am not believe it here. My friend is, you see, and I come to help my friend, Bishop Dale Brown, who I didn't know was anybody for 5 years. We were going out to breakfast and dinner and lunch, and you pay, I pay. And then somebody said, you know, he's one of the Brown brothers. So find out what brother what. No, I'm not in the hair. I didn't know that. And so he said, really? What, you got a big hair, short hair? Your hair look good, but I didn't know it was in the hair. No, I'm saying 5 years. We were going out for 5 years. 5 years. And so about once a month. We try to months sometimes. We go out. And I fly up here, or I'll be up here working, and then we go out and you come hear me preach and stuff. And so one day I looked him up. I said, oh, hey, dude, you somebody. I did. I called. I got some new stuff in my house. I'm paying you, boy. I didn't know that. He thinks it's hilarious. But sometimes those are the best kind of friends. You know what I'm saying? There's something about understanding your place replacement. And seeing it from a pure place. When you see that, there was an evenness that we had, and then once you know that now they've had some other successes you didn't have, it can change things. When God made man, they were even.
Yeah.
They didn't know any other way. There was no other knowledge. There was nothing. That's why they were naked. It was like there's nothing to hide.
Wow.
Sin brought cover up.
That's right.
It brought knowledge before instruction.
That's right.
God wanted them to know the difference between good and evil, but at his pace.
Right.
You want your kids to know things, but at your pace. It's when they jump ahead of you that makes you nervous. So understand, there's something that God intended that was lost in the fall. And so now God said, okay, listen, now that you know what you know, we got to do this differently. We got to align this differently. Women, I want you to choose to do this. Submit to your husband. You choose to do that. Trust me. Trust my wife. That does not mean, guys, that you get the big uses, because if you read on, there's more than that he said. Please note, in verse 33 of the same chapter, he closes with this thought. He said, let the wives see that they respect their husbands. Let each one of you in particular so love his own wife. We'll come to that in a minute. But let the wife see that she respects her husband. Respect is a key element. And God knew if you really want this to work, you have to choose to let him lead, to submit. And he has to love you unconditionally. If either one is not present, it's going to be hard for the other one. The formula that makes it work is this. Look at this now. Wow. Wives submit. He starts with the women first in the conversation. Then he comes to the men. And he says in verse 25 of Ephesians chapter 5. Husbands, love your wives. Say that aloud. Come on, please. Husbands, love your wives. Just as Christ also loved the church. Now, he understood that what a wife needs is unconditional love. It's not tied to beauty. It's not tied to sex. It's not tied to her having the perfect anything. I just love you. So, women, you choose to submit. Men, you choose to love. Women, you choose to show respect. Men, you choose to love. What's amazing is, with the guys, basically, he just talks about one thing: loving your wife. Because here's what happens. Life will stop you from loving because you will demand perfection for love. You'll demand perfection.
Wow.
Husbands, love your wife. No big statement. Just love your wife. Just love your wife.
Wow.
When it's menopause, love your wife. When she's tired, love your wife. There's something about that. Here's the question. When you got married, you promised to love your wife. Did you keep your part of the bargain? Or have you become a conditional lover? It's tied to A, B, or C.
Wow.
It's got to be some reason, or I just don't think it works. You said, okay, I'm going to be married to you guys, but I'm only going to submit when you are, and I agree with you. I'm only going to submit if you love me perfectly. Notice he gives both of them an assignment. Says, here's your responsibility, here's your role. I want you to respect your husband, submit to your husband. I want you to love your wife. That's your role. And then I love the way he puts it into this amazing context. He says, verse 26, that he might sanctify and cleanse with washing of the water by the word, that he might present himself a glorious church, not have a spot or wrinkle. The Lord's goal is something that should be your goal. God's goal is to love his church to completion. Your job is to love your wife to the end. We're all in this together. That makes the difference. Love your wife. Embrace your family. Leave her at the top of your priority list and do the same for him. Now, whenever I read this chapter, I am tempted to just stop there. But in reality, the first 21 verses prior to all of this conversation about submitting and loving is where I think a lot of people miss it. I'm going to read this really fast. You ready? And I'm going to whip through, not the verses, just the points. I'm going to read for you 10 things that Paul said to watch out for before he even talked about relationship. Before he talked about marriage, before he talked about husbands and wives, 10 things he said to watch out for. Number one, watch your love for each other. Say that with me, please. Come on.
Watch your love for each other.
Before he talks about loving your wife the way Christ loves the church, he says to both the husbands and the wives and to the whole family, you need to watch out, because what will go away from you is love for each other. If you're not careful, you've already seen signs of that. Secondly, he says, watch your lust. The Message Bible says in verse 3 of Ephesians 5, don't allow love to turn into lust, setting off a downhill slide into sexual promiscuity, filthy practices, and bullying greed. It's easy, if you're not careful, for love to go astray and lust to become the dominant force in the family. Thirdly, he says, watch your tongue. Though some tongues just love the taste of gossip, those who follow Jesus have better use for language than that. Don't talk dirty or silly. That kind of talk doesn't fit our style, our lifestyle. Thanksgiving is our dialect.
Amen.
Watch your tongue. Listen to how you're talking to each other. Listen to the tone. You're nicer to everybody else. You're respectful to everybody else. You would never say that to your boss, as difficult as your boss is. But when you go home, the way you describe your husband, the word you're on the phone with somebody that, child, he's the silliest man I ever heard in my life. I don't know why I married this fool. He said, now he's in the other room. The things you say to her.
That's right.
Why did you marry somebody to cuss them out? And, right in between your holy words. Blank, 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 and I'll blank you, praise God, blank, blank, blank. Why? Then he says, don't watch your tongue. I love this. You'll surprise you. Watch how you use religion. Verse 5, this is the Bible. You can be sure that using people or religion are things just for what you can get out of them. The usual vibrations on idolatry. In other words, be careful that you don't just use religion to get what you want. You can use religion as a weapon. You can weaponize it. The Lord told me, that really gets on my nerves. The Lord told me something about you. Don't lie on God, just say what you think. You don't know what all this, the Lord led me, the Lord lead me. How you know God lead you? How you know you get all that from? You know the Lord. God not. If you're not careful, you can use religion. Watch out for religious smooth talk. I love this one, verse 6. Don't let yourself get taken in by religious smooth talk. God gets furious with people who are full of religious sales talk, but want nothing to do with him. Couples come to me sometimes and they talk about, and this is me, and I'm kind of okay with it, but I'm a little bothered with it. It goes like this. God is dealing with us as a couple. God's dealing with us. Our God's on us. Feel God is a purpose for us. Do great things for the kingdom of God. Your mighty voice in the midst of darkness. Now to me you sound spooky. That's just my personal opinion. I won't say that to you. Talking all like that, doing all these moves, need some medicine or something. I'm with That's why people don't come to church. They take you off. You don't say it. I had one of my staff members right here, little boy came. She brought him to work. and she jacked him up. She had his arm up and she jacked him up. And he said, "You better stop it. I'm going to tell Mr. Ricky. I'm going to tell Mr. Ricky. You don't stop hurting me." She was so mad with him that morning. She said, tell him. And it was passing by my office. So I heard this ruckus coming in the office. So I said, "Oh, this is that person." They started church off good, so they come in. And so she said, "Go in there and tell him. Pastor Ricky getting on my nerve this morning." And so he came in there. And so she said, "Oh," and she did this. "Oh, God, he's just getting on my nerve." And when she turned her head, he said, I did not tell her for a long time. Sometimes people look at you couples and they go like this. You fight at dinner, you sword fights, and then you use religion. Praise God, the devil, this is how you cuss a person out in religious terms. You know, the devil is using you, praise God. Demons, evil spirits. Hallelujah. You really cussing and using words. You're really trying to demean the person. It's the same thing. You know, I had a guy one time, he was like, his wife into this spiritual thing, and the demons coming out of people, and I'm not, I believe in all that, but, you gotta be careful. When you watch The Exorcist, you get it wrong, And so, you know what I'm saying, you watch too many movies, you start expanding stuff. So she came home and she said, "I see demons in my house. I see demons in my house." She called me. She said, "Pastor, in my house." I said, "Where?" She said, "On the curtain." I said, "Close it." And so, anyway, so she goes home, and she's sitting there breakfast, and she's talking to her husband about demons. She said, "I see a demon on you." I was so mad. I said, "Ah!" She took off. Man, I was so mad with her, man. Took her had a demon. Here we go. I gotta move on. Because you gotta have an ask Pastor Rick. Okay, watch out for religious smooth talk. Watch out. Some of you are lost in that. You're not being reasonable anymore. People can't even talk to you. Can't ask you questions. Because you use it as a tool and a weapon. I don't feel the Lord led me to do that. Really? You just can't go deeper than that. I just don't feel it. Okay? That's not fair. That's not fair. Give me your reason. Be able to give a reason for the hope that's in you. Explain what you mean to me.
That's good.
And if you can, for a moment, when your marriage is bad, don't just use religious talk. It's the devil. That's easy to say.
Yeah.
What's your role in this? Here's my great question. Tell me, after you give me a long list of what your husband did, tell me what you did. Or your wife. Tell me what you did. Give me one thing. What can you bring to this table? And if you think it's all their fault, you're probably wrong. Because you're not that perfect, neither am I. But they cheated on me, they lied on me. Okay. You didn't do that, but what did you do? I'm not justifying behavior that's out of order. I'm simply making a point. There are moments when we use language to justify behavior. That's unfortunate. So watch out for religious talk. Here we go. Let's say them together. You ready? Say watch your love for each other. Come on, say it with me. Watch your love for each other. Watch your lust. Watch your tongue. Watch how you use religion. Watch out for religious smooth talk. Watch who you hang out with. Don't even, verse 7, he said, don't even hang around people like that. Be careful who you hang out with. There are people that can change your marriage. Hanging out with some people every Sunday could be a bad idea. Every week could be a bad idea. Sometimes you have to we've had to do that in our relationship. Sometimes you're so much into people. People come to your house and just staying all day, all night, and all the time, just dropping in. Hey, wait a minute. Pause for a second. You know, sometimes as much as you love family, It's unfair. Don't say anything. Some of you make a comment. That's right. Tell them. I'm gonna tell you, don't do that. That's get up. Don't do that. This is the time to be cool. Focus this way. Don't turn and let it. Straight forward. Love your family. We're a big family.
Yes.
Right. But what I believe, if you're not careful, you can have so many people hanging around you, you never have time to hang with each other. Your house is Central Station. Every now and then, you pause. Let everybody know it's time to go. Now, glad it's night. It's wonderful. You stop by, but you got to go now. Go now. You got to go now. It's time. You can't keep living this way because you never have time to bond with each other. I want my son to vacation with us. We have a family vacation every year, but I encourage him to have his own time with his family, so that they develop their own unique personality. Watch how you hang out with each other. I wanted to say this. This is not all the notes, but let me just say this real quick. Yeah, 3 more to go here. This is just hit me, and it's just, I just want to say this. When your kids get married, let them be married. Don't run your daughter-in-law's house. Be really careful that you don't cross lines. Respect the boundaries. Grandparents, this is hard. Ready? Those are not your children. That's right. Grandparents.
It's hard to say that.
Those. Come on. But see, you know how you were when it was your children. When you were a parent.
That's right.
Right? See, you can't say it. Come on. So those are not my children. They're your grandchildren. You love them. You love them and you care about them. But they will take over your life. And you will come in there and you will wreak havoc. My mother used to come to my house. My mother would say, wow. No dishcloth in here. I don't have a dishcloth. My wife studied biology. She's big on paper towels. She throws everything away. She sees bugs everywhere. So we have paper towels everywhere, all my house. My mom used to say, Mama, stop it. And I had to pull her aside and say, Mama. She said, okay, I'm not going to say anything. You know, it's not until you interact in this next level of family that you see things. I didn't know that my family always commented on your weight. My grandmother used to do that. My grandmother would see my wife and say, oh, you gained a little weight in that hip over there. No. And Diane said to me, could you please ask your grandmother, could you just help me with this? Every time I'm around your family, they're commenting on whether I've grown or not. So I went to Grandmama. I said, Grandmama, could you do me a favor? Please, not every time my wife comes over, could you please not say, I am not talking about your wife. So the next time they saw Diane, they said, you're so beautiful. Everything is perfect about you. Now you've been funny, Grandma. No, grandparents can be a problem. And here's why. I'll give you the answer to it. Because they're high on GP juice. Grandparent juice. Grandparents will kill people and bury it in the backyard. Google it. They did kill them and bury it in the backyard. Only because they were going to move and take the children away. They in jail today, they killed them and threw them in the backyard. That's terrible. You can get out of control. And if you're not careful, you can sabotage what you're trying to build. That woman is not you. They get older, they start talking and telling you stuff. So, anyway, everybody get somebody that say amen if you did. Okay, so Watch who you hang out with. That's number 6 on the notes. Number 7 says, watch your time. Don't waste time. Verse 11 says, on useless work. This is Ephesians 5 and 11. Sometimes, if you're not careful, it's the way your family schedule works. You're trying to do everything, and you got too many things on your plate. Your family needs to have a 7-day rest cycle. Every 6th day you work, 1 day you rest. I would suggest 2 if you can. It's very important. I live with the 2-day rest cycle. I need, after I preach on Sunday, Monday I'm off, and most of the time Tuesday. Now this Tuesday I have staff strategy meeting, but I'll take another day off during the week. I try. Or I take off some evenings. Or I try hard to have absolutely waste time days, nothing on my life, just rest. I can't spend time doing everything.
That's right.
So you need to watch how you use your time. Number 8, watch out for hypocrites. Rip the cover off those frauds around you. You want to be the kind of person who knows who's real and who's not. So let me give you all 10. You ready? Say it again. Come on, say watch your love life. Watch your love for each other. Come on. Watch your love for each other. Watch your lust. Watch your lust. Watch your time. Watch your time. Watch how you use religion. Watch out for religious smooth talk. Watch who you hang out with. Watch your time. Watch out for hypocrites. Get that down. Let's be clear about that. Some people are not genuine. After that, in number 9, watch your drinking. Verse 18. Don't drink too much wine. That cheapens your life. Drink the Spirit of God. Draws of Him is what you should see. Are you using drugs and alcohol to cover stuff? Are you still, even though you're Christian, you still drowning in it still? And you won't face it? You won't have a courageous conversation about that? I was talking to a couple the other day. They still smoke a lot of weed. They both got professional jobs. They both have great careers. And they're listening every day because they're still doing the same thing. Go to church faithfully, and they both get high. And what's interesting is I'm counseling them thinking that this was weaknesses and all. No, they high all the time. That's why they fight all the time. Make bad decisions financially. He's smoking on the way to work, smoking when he get back from work. And she joined him. And she's smoking along with him. And they got kids. I'm thinking, okay, these saved church people who love God. I'm not doubting your love for God. But you're just not loving yourself. Sometimes it's not that you don't love God, it's that you don't love you. Because what you're doing doesn't love you. You got one DUI, and so nobody knows it. You can hide it in the church because you just look spiritual, but you know one more. Now you're going to lose your job. You need to pause for a minute. What's interesting is notice that Paul says all this before he talks about family. Before he talks about wives. He talks about the practical areas of their life they need to look at. So he says, watch your drinking. The last thing he says, watch, number 10, watch who you listen to. He said in verse 19, sing hymns instead of drinking songs. Don't sing about the drinking songs. I'm high tonight, baby. Sing songs from your heart to Christ. Sing praises over everything. Any excuse for a song to God the Father in the name of our Master Jesus Christ. Out of respect for Christ, he courteously, out of respect for Christ, be courteously reverent to one another. In other words, watch what you listen to. Now, after saying that, then he says, be submitted one to another. What's interesting, all the things he says in the first 21 verses forces you to talk about the practical side of your life before you talk about the family side of your life. See, the family side of your life can't get better if the practical side of your life is not better. If you're listening to anything, doing anything, drinking anything, all that. Okay, so now you're going to take a messed up life, right? The first 21 verses, right? You listen to everybody, you're religious the wrong way, religion the wrong way, you mean whatever. And then now we want to be, okay, like Christ, loving my wife. Really? It doesn't work that way. You got to put both of those pieces together. Are you with me? Yes. Both of those have to go together. And if you do that, you have a chance of a better life. Now, I, my friend, have given you a lot to think about, but now you get to ask Pastor Rick. Do me a favor, look at your neighbor and say, this has been amazing. Come on, tell them. This has been amazing. So we're going to do this. We take about 30 minutes. You get to ask me whatever you like. It's called Ask Pastor Rick. And we close out with this for today. Did you enjoy this weekend so far?
Yeah.
Whatever you want to ask, put it on the table. I did get an email, by the way. If you're here and you send an email, it's a great questions. I hope I've answered some of your questions in the round of what I talked about. If not, email me again, and I'll jump back at it and answer them directly. Feel free, if you would please, to ask me anything you like. Fire away. Ask Pastor Rick. It is up to you. I'll pass the mic to you. Pass it behind you, sir. Ask the mic, and if you do ask a question, you're far back. I'll just repeat it. Okay? What's your question? Hold it real close to your mouth. Hold it real close. Couples and finances. Some information, then take that mic and check it out. There you go. Some couples and finance. I think a couple, first an individual, Ricky, has to decide what he wants to do in his life financially, and Diane has to decide. When we both decide individually, then we come together and analyze those decisions. So, if Diane wants to be out of debt and I don't, it doesn't work. You with me? So we have some differences personally. You are more frugal, thrifty, cheap. Diane, if you take her purse, you'll be very disappointed. You go to jail for nothing. I'm different. I'm a risk taker. I'm entrepreneurial, but she helps me manage my entrepreneurial stuff. So one of our great moments financially was she came up to me. She saw me we were managing the business side of my life, and she said to me, can I help you with that? That was a great moment. Can I help you with that? And she paused. And she came in and she took over some of the business branch. She's been amazing. I've got her records. Things are just typed right, organized because of her. My accountant loves her. She's phenomenal. It's a team effort. Money is not going to work unless you come together and get honest. Now, the key thing is you don't want to stifle the energy and the dream of a person. So here's what we made a deal. She said, you pay my bills, okay? And you save $1 for money, okay? And you can do your little thing, okay? I don't want to say little thing, big thing, okay? Big thing. But we had to work at it, and it's still a labor of love because we're different. But I think we're more in line today than we have been. But the key thing is knowing your financial identity, your personality, and knowing that, okay, if you have a history of running ahead of yourself and overspending, you've got to hear Ephesians 5:20-21. Maybe we need to submit here a little bit. Yeah. We need to come together and say, okay, I know I tend to do this. For example, in the church, I tend not to handle benevolence because I just give all money. I just give money. Okay, I'm a little more generous in that regard. So I have a team that does it. So when you ask for money from me for benevolence, I send you to the team, and I let them decide. Because I know that I don't need to do that. I've even learned that there are just certain things in my household I need to just let Diane do. I just let her do it. And she's consistent. She's going to do the same thing every day. So it's coming to grips with, okay, this is where she's strong, this is where I'm strong. And then if you got kids, state the goal. Here's what we're going to do. I believe in empowering everybody with money, and I believe in empowering money and working together. But that takes some honest moments. And so I hope I said a little bit more I can say, but I hope that starts you off. Somebody else, raise your hand. Ask Pastor Rick, yes.
Is it wrong to keep money separate? We're newlyweds, and we have come into this with a whole lot of different ways of doing a lot of things, and money is one of them. We're both good with money, but we just don't mix it. And is that, in your mind, what are your thoughts on that?
Go ahead, Ms. Sweat.
And this is a kind of, how long, well, in terms of submission, because I was I wouldn't say accomplished a lot, but I've done a lot in my own right, come with my own stuff, and, how do you, and the submission part, it's like, it's challenging, and I don't know what my question is really in that.
You're hearing me say, you got to give up power that I asked you to give up.
Okay, this is the question.
Yeah.
He is a strong personality,
Right.
and I'm a strong personality.
Okay.
How do I submit without being overtaken? Because I've been in a situation where I was overtaken, and I'm like,
Okay. Here's what I did, and I like what you said. I think what you said was really balanced and fair. First of all, no one's asking you to be overtaken. No one's asking you to give up your right to have power and money and independence. I like that. A girl needs what, guy?
Girl needs cash.
Girl needs cash. My daughter will tell you that. All the girls in my nieces will tell you. Uncle Ricky always said, girl needs what? Cash. And I believe in making sure they have cash. I'm in the fight with them. Because I understand a woman's head is better in a better space. I don't want my daughter going to college eating George and give her no lunch. I believe in allowances. That's another thing for me. I believe in that. I believe people should have amounts of money to manage. That's why your kids don't know how to manage money, because you never gave me anything. I never managed 50%. You got no money to manage. Give them some money. They got to earn it. Well, they can't earn it. They get in school. That's my opinion. Pray for me. I just believe it. I think it stops the devil from ruling your life. So Diane has her own account, but we do things together. So there are projects we work on together. For example, she'll say, she volunteered last week, I'm going to pay for vacation. I'm going to pay for most of it. And so this year I paid for a little larger portion of the lady, but the girl took us all on a cruise, and man, she was rolling. I said, go with your bag. So there are moments when we do things together. So the best place might be to start working on projects together. So we want to buy some furniture. Okay, well, I'll do this, I'll do that. You pull together. You go, okay, if you don't want to mix your money, and see, understand, at certain levels of income, it does become a challenge. You know what I'm saying? What you can do, though, is work together on common projects, and then that can help you feel better. And once you develop trust, it's a lot easier. You with me? See, submission isn't hard when the person loves you like Christ loved the church. The only reason it's difficult is because it's not safe. When you ask a person to submit to you, you're saying it's safe. And if you have a history of not making it safe, then they don't want to submit to you because they feel overrun. Okay? So work on it. That's a good project. All right? And yeah, even though both of our names are on both accounts. But I'm going to say this to you. My lawyer said, and it's true, at certain stages of your wealth, you have to separate some of that, or you lose money for tax reasons. And so at certain points of stage, my lawyer told me earlier in our life, told me to separate a certain amount for her, and I said, no, I ain't there yet. I'm not there yet. But I do think it's we're headed at a stage in our life where certain pockets of wealth have to be separated, and that's just smart tax stuff. So, okay, I said a lot. Somebody else, where we at? Ask Pastor Rick. Talk loud, man, so they can hear you. They're coming to you, buddy. They're running. That man's in shape right there, boy. Yeah. All right, there you go.
Pastor, just to pick back on that same question, you continue on a little further, because that's some confusion, I think, comes with it when I hear what you say, but then at your point that you're married, where do you go back and say, okay, you're unequally yoked? How can you go back and fix that? Okay, I came to the table this, you come to the table that. I hear you, but the Bible said we're joint heirs. So where? What
am I saying that confuses you, that makes you feel a bit uncomfortable?
That's good, Pastor.
What am I saying? Take me to the promised land. Let me see what you're doing. Does it sound like I'm saying you don't mix your money? Am I saying, what am I saying? Help me out. Just tell me, I can take it.
I mean, it's a lot in it. I guess we got to go home and figure out a lot. I mean, what you said already, okay, watch out for hypocrites. How do you do that? We don't get that. We got to go home and figure it out. I mean, I'm hearing what you said. You're putting out some great information, but give us how.
Well, the how you figure out as you face it. For example, when you see somebody that's not honest, what a hypocrite is, you go, okay, that's one. That's what we're talking about. Well, okay, I now know how to watch out for people who are not honest and transparent. Watch out for who you talk to. Watch out who you listen to. The how is simple. It's really about, and you've lived long enough, and you've dealt with all those kind of people. You've dealt with all those circumstances. You know more of how already. Christians over spiritualize things. Just do what you know. I believe you closer than you think. Okay? Somebody else back here. And we'll come to you, and then we're going to go on this side over here. Yes.
I don't need it.
Yeah, you do. You got to yell it out because I can't hear what I'm saying. No, trust me. I can't hear you. Hold it up, quick.
This is our second marriage, and we took premarital training here. And one of the first things, the first class Bishop talked about was trust. You haven't said anything about trust. But I think with women, our number one thing is trust. Being able to trust a man to believe that he's going to do right. Even godly men doing right. And then when you lose that trust, you lose respect too. And so when you say to reverence that person, you know, how do you rebuild that trust?
Right. Well, here's what I said a minute ago. I said, it's got to be safe. That's what I meant. That's the trust part of it. You got to be safe. But here's what I think is really important. How many times have we been untrustworthy in our relationship with God?
That's right.
And God deals with us. Sometimes we get really angry with people who are not trustworthy with us personally. But we feel that God should be highly patient and redemptive toward us when we fail. If God jacked up every non-tither in public, you see a lot of people all jacked up. In public. You know, God's getting that person. They're tired. They are not faithful in their attitude. How many times? So I get your point, but I'm going to tell you, I counsel men and women. It is equally as difficult for men whose women cheat as much. I counsel a bunch of women who cheat, and a bunch of women who are not honest, and they got boyfriends and they're married, and I got a whole bunch of them who take the money. I got one, she went and spent $20,000 on a weekend on a spree just to get it. I'm going to show him something. She went and swiped up and spent $20,000 on American Express in one weekend. No, she's frustrated. But he forgave her. They worked it out, kind of, sort of. But kind of, sort of. But what I'm saying is, everybody can hurt in that area, and that's why I think we both should try. But we both must be forgiving. Because if I'm not forgiving, there's no hope.
That's real talk.
I wish I worked really hard to be trustworthy with Diana, and it's just nerve-wracking. Bring me the microphone. Yeah, I want to comment on this because what you said was so important and so valuable. But I want you to just say something about what I'm just saying. It's because you have to, even though I've been trustworthy, there are moments when it's just hard to trust because of the complexity of our life, right?
Right, and you tend to bring your baggage with you, all of the hurt and pain of your childhood, the experiences that you've seen. And then prior to me marrying my husband, I had a philosophy that I trust no man. Mm-hmm. So here I am, saying, God, I want the best that you have for me. I want your perfect will for my life. But yet I'm carrying the spirit of, I trust no man. So I had to say, okay, God, if I want your best, that means I'm going to have to trust you, God, with my heart. And if I trust you, God, with my heart, who you send my way, I'm going to have to trust them with my heart. Now, does that mean that I expect perfection out of him? No, because I'm not perfect. So I'm just so grateful that I serve a forgiving God who forgives me over and over again. So, and I trust him with my heart, so I have to do the same here. He's not perfect. If he makes a mistake, he said, God forgive me, and Diane, please forgive me. I trust him again with my heart. So you have to really fight against whatever is that historical residue that you have, because you'll just bring all that baggage into something that wonderful that God has for you. So it's actually up to you to say, Okay, God forgave me. Oh, how many times has God forgiven me? You know, how many times do I want to be forgiven and trusted again and given a new start? You know, I need to be able to say the same thing for him.
I just deal with people who have been brutally hurt and they bounce back from it because of the power of God working in their life.
Yes.
Well, I've seen women get pregnant from a guy on a business trip, and the guy took in a baby and they worked it out. I've seen wives get caught cheating, physically caught in the act with the, and they're still together. I've seen people go through things that I counseled them through, and I shivered in the middle of it. But they lifted their hands. They lifted their hands to God and say, God, I am out of my zone of power. I don't know how to deal with this. But oh God, I invite you into my life. I invite you into this marriage. I ask you to come, oh God, and pour your spirit on me. He's been so mean. She's been so wicked. I mean, she's been such a witch. I mean, I know they prayed this prayer, but oh God, I pray. And I've seen women change. I've seen people change. I've seen families change. I've served a living God. Come on, say it. Close out because my time is done. I got 5 minutes. I got one. How many more questions do I have? I have one. Do I have two? Is that it? You got the last point today? You got two. I got two. No, okay. Three and we're done. Okay. All right, 3 and we're done. 1, 2, 3, and we're done for today. Thank you, sweet. Maybe 4. Do I see 4? You raise your hand. No, you did worship. Okay. All right, listen, girl, go for it.
So you said when you're talking or counseling people, you always ask, tell me what you did.
What you do. You're part of it.
And my question is, if the person you're talking to don't feel like they did anything, how do you address them when there is a problem?
They don't know themselves. You cannot be in a relationship and be perfect. You feel as if, here's what they should do. Ask the person. You may not agree with them, but just ask the person. And let the person give you their perspective. I don't agree with a lot of things that says about me. I don't agree with my staff's conclusion. I don't. But my kids, I don't think they're right. They said things about me. I said, where did you get that story from? Please, give me a break. So anyway, ask the person and then just take note of it. Say, okay, that's a different perspective. Somebody else right here? I think there's 2 is here. Yes, and then you're 3. Okay. Yes. Go for it.
Okay, so one of the 10 points on what to watch out for was watch your drinking.
Yes.
If there is a spouse, talk about a couple that you counsel who's coming to church regularly, say for people that they're dealing with smoking weed on the regular. If the spouse has began to indulge in alcohol, not sloppy, but the other spouse is concerned that other spouse is not seeing the purpose of what is underneath that draw to alcohol all of a sudden, how does one deal with that?
They're grown. Pray for them, love them, and talk to them the best you can. Pray for them, love them, and talk to them the best you can. I don't have the power to stop you because you are an independent grown person. I'm married to an adult. I can only give you my opinion and love you forward. That's it. I just don't have the power to stop you. I think there are a lot of people that are high on more than alcohol. They're high on work. They're high on pride. They're high on a lot of things. So I understand how difficult it is to watch certain things. But I tell people, sometimes all I can do is watch the movie. You might heard me say that here, I think. I can't stop the movie because it's your life. The one thing that God gave you that I can't stop you from, and this is so amazingly true, this is your life. This is your life. You will bury some people. I have buried people. I watched spouses bury spouses because they wouldn't listen. He did last month, a couple months ago. He said he wasn't going to the doctor. He didn't go. He died. He said, I'm not going to the doctor. And he didn't go to the doctor. And one more time, he died. He died all of a sudden. Right there in front of the family. I'm dead. Bam. There you go. Baby. I'm not being funny. I'm being honest. I mean, what can I do? park it around the corner. They come to get it. Sometimes all I can do is watch the movie.
Yeah.
I have no power, and sometimes what's tragic is they're close to you. Children, same thing.
Right.
So I send you some money in the commissary. On jail. You got a video. Oh, that's my son. I know his big head anyway. That's what that. You know, you can't solve everything, and God won't let you because He gave them life.
That's right. That's right.
It's not your life, that's their life. It's a gift God gave them.
For the record.
You want to piggyback? You want to go to the last one? Right? Go ahead. Hold on. You want a question? You want to ask a question? Ask a question. Ask a question. And then we're going to do this one, and then we're done. You get to piggyback. Yes.
With that, how do you deal with a person, a spouse, a significant other who, let's say, has partaken in drinking, has partaken in smoking marijuana, when that's not what your morals are, but they're connected to you? How can you separate that if you're one in a marriage, or like, because it doesn't align with your morals, your purpose, your.
But let's do this. How can God align with us with all our issues, and we have a relationship with Him? See,
Amen.
it's a problem to love people, and it's a problem but God, and this is what we make decisions. First of all, I often say, people most of the time didn't just start doing stuff. Most of the time. They did a little bit, and they kind of grew. They only smoked one joint a month, but they did smoke once. Now it's 5 a week, and you're nervous. So you can't be unfair and say, okay, well, most of the time they've been doing it. But even if they choose, and this is to me, and this is hard for me as a pastor, I am an individual. Diane, I want you to do me a favor. Stand up over there. This is Ricardo Temple. This is Diane. When she sassy, she say Florence Bride Temple. Ready? Say what I say. My life.
My life.
One more time. My life.
My life.
I don't control that. And there are people I tell, the guy won't do right, gotta go to jail, gotta die. What can I do? Love them the best you can. The way God loves you the best He can. It is all about giving people that right. I wish I had a magic button where I could make people do what I want to do sometimes. But I have learned, and it's painful as a pastor, 37 years of this, I'm telling you, 45 years of preaching, I have learned I don't have that power. 43 years, I don't have that power. It's hard when your kids want to do right. But you don't have that power.
That's right.
Because God breathed into them the breath of life and gave them their life. Love each other until we get better. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. Last one for the day, my brother. You get the last one.
Oh, I got the last special.
Yes, sir. Go for it.
Been sitting here trying to figure out how to formulate this. It actually probably was a question for your wife, but now that I think about it, it's probably a mix.
Okay.
So, I have so many friends that are going through this. So, there are a lot of people in here, relationships, married, and you fell in love with her. I know you saw her across the room and you were like, she was so beautiful, so radiant, but there was something past that you saw in her, that you fell in love with. It could have been her goals, her dreams, for you too. What do you do when that falls apart? And what I mean by that is, you said this is your life. You had to say this is your life. But what if your wife fell in love with one of the many things, the fact that you wanted to be a pastor, but you settled on being an usher? What if you saw her and she was so beautiful, but you moved forward past that? You saw so many things in her, but she changed, and maybe it could be something small, like maybe that dress that you love.
So she's changed.
Maybe you don't like that dress, or she doesn't. But I'm not going to do it that way anymore.
So let me see if I can see what you're saying. If I expected one thing, but I ended up with something else over time. Am I there? Okay, let me respond to that. That's the mountain I talked about. I said you survive marriage by embracing the climb of the mountains. My wife did not want me to be a pastor. She said, I don't want to marry a pastor. That was her first, when she first dated me. She was totally against her mom was a pastor. She didn't want to marry me. She didn't want to marry anybody younger than her. I'm about 18 months younger than her. And, but she rocked cradle. She got me. I mean, you just say you're not going to marry anybody younger. Definitely not. And even dating. I mean, she just was an old soul when I married her. She was teaching high school at 20. I'm telling you, she was an old soul. So she had this whole thing about what she wanted. But I had to step up though. And when I stepped up, it worked out, and that was my blessing, because outside of receiving Jesus, this is the best decision I ever made in my life. This is true. God has been a great blessing in my life. But I don't have the right, in my opinion, to be disappointed in your potential. I only have the right to be disappointed in mine. I can have an opinion and inspire you, but to be mad with you because you didn't become a lawyer and I thought you had lawyer potential is unfair to me. People have the right, as they climb the mountain of their life with me, to decide where they want to stop or go. And it's releasing people to be who they are. That, my friend, is important. And so that's my short answer, my friend. Love them where they are, because as the mountain climbs, people sometimes get to a certain peak of the mountain and they'll say, I don't think I want to do that anymore. I think I want to do this. And so what I try to do is be supportive. If Diane comes in and says, I don't want to be in church work anymore, I want to go back and teach in school, I would support that decision. That's what she wants, because this is her life. Okay? One more? Yes.
This subject didn't come up.
Hold on, they'll bring the mic to you real quick. Yes.
I just want to ask about blended families. We have so many people that are struggling with blended families, and nobody really addressed that. We really have addressed that. But how do you deal with that when you have kids from the marriage and there may be causing conflict in the marriage, or the spouse may feel like, well, you're not as close to those kids as you should be because they're your kids now, and you may see that, but that it causes a lot of conflict, and I know that's something that we as marriage couples don't really hear a lot about.
Yesterday I talked about it a little bit. I said, I said if you first of all, you have to be honest about how you feel and not fake. We just got married. I don't love your kids like I love mine. I can say I do, but I don't know them like I know mine. And sometimes I don't even love my own kids like I do. Now you bring your 6'7" boy in my life, and he look intimidating, and I don't know, what to do with him. I think blended families are challenged, and I think that's why God originally never wanted us to die, never wanted us to get divorced, never wanted any of that to happen, because he knew it would be hard. We were supposed to live forever, right? Never die, never have to go through this. So we're really working with a hybrid almost when you go through this experience. But here's what you can do. You can decide to be honest about how you feel and work on it. You can decide, as counseled somebody yesterday, they had this big blow up, and so they worked out a deal where, and I just talked to the wife a couple of days ago, she said, what we did was, okay, the kids are going to be, they worked out a deal with the kids, they worked on their living arrangements, but they got really honest and said, this isn't working. She said that was this month. This isn't working. When you said, this isn't working, okay, and this is how I really feel. And then you have to be fair, because sometimes what you step into is, when I see blended families, sometimes I see the blended philosophies being the biggest challenge. One has a view this way, one views it that way. In other words, money. And one family, one guy said he believed that all the kids should leave home at 18, without exception. The other person didn't believe that. And so as a blended family, that was the point of contention. He was unrelenting. Unrelenting. And it caused the family eventually to stay divorced. And it was, I think at the root of it was all about the kids, the grandkids. It became a constant issue. And I think you have to be willing to change your philosophy. You have to be willing to say, okay, this is how I feel. But see, sometimes you think you're sinning. That's the problem, man. I'm so right that there's no other way to the mall but my way. There's no other way to get this done but the way I would do it. You are in a relationship. This is a mountain climb. We have to talk about considering other ways. The way you discipline your kids. You're about to scare, intimidate the boys. She's from a family that doesn't do that. You have to be willing to negotiate another way. In my opinion, what has helped me in managing a blended church, because I have a lot of different people, is consider other ways. Same thing in a family. Other ways. I can come to the word of faith and be okay. Paul said, I became all things to all men that I might win them. Your goal as a blended family should be to win them. Look, I'm not your daddy. You want to call me Mr. Ricky, whatever works for you, we'll work it out. I'm not going to make you call me daddy number 2 or whatever. Okay? Let's work out the titles, and then let's work on a relationship. And then get to know each other. There are moments when we have to have courageous conversations. Because there are things that maybe your parents allowed that I'm not going to be okay with. You know, you're not going to bring your boyfriend in the bedroom in this house today. That may have been okay all the last several years, but that's not okay for me. Let's negotiate that. Okay, we can't work that out. We need to get you a place. You know what I'm saying? Everybody comes together and has, and this is why before you blend, you should talk. Right. You should negotiate and be honest and truthful. But if you want a man or a woman so bad, you might lie. That's right. And then when you called on it, now you're mad, see. But sometimes if you be honest, you say, we didn't have enough conversation before. Let's see if we can talk first. And you know, it can work. I mean, it really can. But it is complex and complicated. But here's the deal. I'm finally going to say this and finish. The kids are going to be better when you unite. If you want to fix it, you have to unite. And you can't unite around just your opinion. You have to be willing to hear both sides. And if you can't do it alone, get somebody to help you go to counseling. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes I help mediate conflict because they can't hear each other. I help them hear each other. So, did I help you today? Yeah. Okay. For you again. Let's pray. Father, I thank you for all that's been said. I pray that in these days, these hours of discussion, that you have covered enough, we've covered enough to help heal. We're not perfect. There's no perfect session. But oh God, I lift up, you can lift your hand with me, please. I lift up every marriage. I lift up every single person. I lift up everybody who's in here today who's a relationship dream. May they have the courage, Lord God, to honestly look at their relationship and face the changes they need to make. Yes. And once they face those changes, I pray they have the courage to make plans. And then, oh God, I pray they put their money where their mouth is and invest in that change. And that they would then, Lord God, prioritize their relationships. Success is something that's intentional. It comes in pieces. And we must be willing, oh God, to really take this seriously. But I pray above all they leave here today loving themselves. Loving you, loving themselves, and loving others. That's the order. Loving God with all their heart. Loving themselves and taking that example and using it to love others. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Thank you for having me.